Have you ever wanted to be supported, but no one actually supports you? But then when you win, everyone seems to come up from the woodwork and congratulate you? Or you wish that that's going to happen, or you think that's going to happen? Well, I'm here to affirm those things. I'm going to talk to you through the process. So stick around, my friend. Stick around. Because today, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the process of going from sucking to winning. And it's not a fun process. It's a very dull, long, drawn out process. We're also going to talk about motivation and what the heck does that mean? And why do you need it if you do need it? And how often do you need it? And where do you get it? So, this here is the slide. It's called Congrats versus Support, or Support versus Congrats. And I am Dr. Spinati, yours truly. But before we start, of course, I have a few announcements. So today is March the 12th, which marks day 53. I believe it's day 53. It's either day 53 or day 54. I think it's day 54, actually, now that I think of it. It's day 54, podcast 54 of doing live streams straight of these wonderful podcasts. And I've learned quite a bit, and I think you've learned quite a bit as well. So it's both a learning process, and I'm going to cover something very important today. And it's going to be about the process, the journey of it sucking and you being uncomfortable, and yours truly telling you his experiences of it sucking and how things are improving. Now, I'm going to make this very short and very terse because I always promise to do that, but today it is going to be that. So stick around, hang around, maybe grab a bag of chips, or if you're fasting, just smile and just keep listening. Today is day number 2 for those that are fasting in Ramadan. And it is also day 2 in March break. So some of us have found ways for us to spend more time with our family. And so it is a good time because all the kids are off school. I don't have any kids, but all the kids are off school. And so obviously the parents want to spend some time with them. Pretty obvious. So I think I mentioned everything. Tend to forget some things. Yes, that is it. Okay, now let's get to the program. And this is the program. Okay, it's the support versus the congrats. Now, the reason why this spurred this topic, is because of this picture. Okay, I'm going to take my face off of it because, you know what, why not? I'm going to leave my face there. You'll see here this guy standing in the stadium, and he's sitting there by himself. Okay, and it says the word support. And you'll see right next to him, you'll see a crowd, right? In the same stadium, but you'll see a crowd. Now, you'll see the support there. Now, it's not the guy that we're supporting, right? It's him. He's supporting some dude that's training. So the congratulations is after the dude trains so hard and fails a bunch of times, then you have a bunch of people that surround this person and says, wow, you're amazing, right? I wish I could be like you. But no one actually cares for the struggle. No one cares to see how you're actually doing it. They care to see the highlights. They care to see the reels. They care to see, oh, yeah, like they put the music and they dim the music, they dim the light down, and then they're like, okay, wow, this person. And it really strikes some emotion when you watch that kind of video, and they're like, oh, that person really went through some tough times. And then you start reflecting on your own life. You're like, yeah, I am going through some tough times. And then you like, oh man, I'm never going to make it. And then you just start scrolling on social media. That's basically what happens, really. But this is not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is for me to describe to you the point of going from that, that support of one, to getting people cheering you on. Okay. And the reason why I'm going through this is because it's important to realize that if you're going through this, there's actually phases, like there's actually steps for you to understand that you're going to go through those ones. So it's really important to actually recognize where you are, because if you don't recognize where you are, you're going to feel lost along the process. You're going to be like, man, this is taking too long. I don't want to do this. I didn't sign up for this. I'm going to switch to something else. And then you're going to go into a yo-yo pattern where you're never going to actually achieve anything because you're always going to go back to the starting point. All right. This is me. Okay. When I first started the journey of getting in shape and staying in shape, I was like this. Okay. But the only difference is that when I started like that, the thing is that people around me didn't actually say anything. And that is literally how yours is going to be. Okay. So when you start anything at all, no one actually tells you that you suck. No one actually says to you, hey, like, you're not that good. They just look at you and they smile. Now, you're more than likely hanging around people that are like that, right? They're probably out of shape. They're probably eating junk food. They're probably eating sweets on a regular basis. They're probably not exercising. They're not really health conscious. So you're surrounded by people that are like that. You have to keep that in mind because if you decide to switch, you're like, I'm going to switch, I'm going to change, whatever it is, finance, emotion. Well, I mean, no, not really emotion, but finance, relationship, and body. Okay, those are the big three. So, or spiritual, right? Like faith. So you're like, okay, I want to change. I want to become more faithful. I want to become more fit. I want to make more money, right? Whatever it is that you have to do, the current state that you're at, you suck at it. Okay. You absolutely suck at it because you're probably fat. You're probably broke. You're probably not spiritual. And your relationship probably sucks if you're in a relationship. So, and the reason why you're in that state is because you have to look around and be like, hey, like, who am I hanging around with that is broke, doesn't have much of a spiritual aspect to them, and their relationship sucks, and their body sucks, right? Like, who is it that I'm hanging around? What am I watching? What am I consuming that is getting me to not change? So that's step number one, is for you to recognize that you are in a state where everything around you is encouraging your current state. That's number one. Number two is after you make that decision, you're like, I need to make that decision, and it's a decision that I'm not going to go back on because it's too painful for me to stay where I am. Now, even if you don't change your environment, because you've made a decision in your mind, you haven't changed your environment. Now you're going to actually face the first thing, which is, as I put here, self-doubt. Can I do it? Is it possible for me to do it? Have I done it before? Yes, but have I done it before at this time, at this circumstance, in my current atmosphere? You're going to have a lot of self doubt. The second thing you're going to have, and self doubt, by the way, the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because I want you to recognize this is normal. Like, this is the normal process of change. First thing you're going to say is, I don't know if I can do this, right? After the initial, high of you being like, yeah, like you're gonna imagine yourself, conquering the mountain, getting to the mountaintop, and then now you have to get to work, and you're like, my goodness, like there's so much stuff to do, and then you're like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can speak well on the podcast. I don't know if I can articulate myself well. I don't know how I'm gonna look. I don't know how I'm gonna sound. It's a process. So the first thing is self-doubt. The second thing you're going to pass through is comparison, social comparison. This is when you're looking at social media of all platforms and you're looking at them and you're like, these people are amazing at what they're doing. And I am not even close. Like, I'm not even close. They were more than likely, they grew up in a family that they spoke a lot, they joked a lot. They maybe grew up in an environment that had their friends encourage them to speak. Maybe they were innately, they were born with a gift to speak. Like, whatever it is, you're going to create this like shell or this environment or this like fence that is going to alienate yourself from those people versus yourself. But what you don't understand is that any amazing person that you see was never amazing when they first started, like, ever. Maybe they started when they were younger, like Tiger Woods started when he was, I think, 2 years old. Kobe Bryant started when he was 4 years old. Like, but they started and they sucked. But you have to understand they sucked, right? Yes, because they did it early on, later on in their teens, they're actually a lot better than the majority of the people around them, if not everybody. But it doesn't mean that they were born with that ability, right? They just spent a lot of time. They were obsessed from the time that they were young. But that also means that they sacrificed a lot from when they were young, right? Like, you have to look at it from your perspective. If you weren't in those shoes, you actually enjoyed your youth. They didn't, right? they delayed their gratification until much, much later. And then they started enjoying their time after. But then, even then, because they built this mentality of competitiveness, of them achieving so much, their level of like what they think is fun is a lot different than what you think is fun. So you have to understand that too. There's a lot of sacrifice along with it. So the social comparison is normal. So the first thing is self-doubt. Second thing is social comparison. You're going to see other people, they're going to be selling a lot more things than you, right? Let's say if you start an e-commerce business, they're going to be selling a ton more than you, or they're going to have a lot more reviews than you. You start a business. A lot of people are established, right? A lot of people have business background. A lot of people have environments or friends that are in business. They can give them proper advice. They can move faster. Like, you have to understand, people are in different environments. It doesn't mean you suck. It doesn't mean you can't have the ability. It doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed. Quite the contrary. It means that you have so much potential because you don't have all these things, but yet you still want it, right? They probably were influenced by all these things around them. And so that it gave them that motivation, that push for them to go in that direction. But because you're just like, look, I need to get this and I need to make it happen. To you, you're like, this is so important to you that you don't even need external motivation. You don't need the environment. You don't need people giving you advice. That tells you that you actually have higher potential than those people that, if truly they were born with an ability, or truly they were born with like a father figure that had all these things and they were just following in the footsteps, they already had a path. You're creating your own, which is going to make you a lot more stronger. And it's going to give you a unique spin on your angle, which is going to create a much different impact than those people that you are inspired by to begin with. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It is very, very normal for you to have this social comparison, but you have to keep the social comparison in proper perspective. Okay, so that is it. So step number one is you're going to have self-doubt, completely normal. Second, you're going to compare yourself to other people, also completely normal. The third is now you have to develop new habits. So now you have to break down the habits. So if you have the habit of having junk food in your cabinets, you have to go into the cabinets and flush all that out. If you have, I don't know, a bunch of things that you're following on social media that is not going to, inspire you, or it's not going to help you move towards the goal, you have to unfollow all these people. Maybe you have friends that are posting things that to you, this is not going to help you. Maybe you have to unfriend these people. You have to unfollow them. No offense to them. It just means that your goal is so much more of a priority that you just got to do what you have to do in order for you to get closer to the goal. You have to form new habits. Maybe you sleep late and you have to wake up early. Maybe, I don't know, you don't cook and now you have to start cooking. You have to develop new habits. Okay, something is going to change, and that is uncomfortable. I cannot stress that enough. Getting yourself to do things that is not what you usually do is probably the most uncomfortable thing ever. And this is when you're going to psychologically start to psych yourself out. You're going to start to say to yourself, other people are going to look at me. Other people are going to mock me. People are going to talk to me. Yes, they are. Like just face it. They are. Initially, no one's going to care. No one's going to care initially. But then as you go on, they're going to see you change, and they're going to see themselves not change. They're going to start making fun of you. They're not used to it. So you have to understand that developing a new habit is part of the process. And the mockery is also part of the process. Now, this is the phase. These are the phases. There are 6 phases that you're going to pass through, okay? From people cheering you on initially, right? Like, this is different than the support. Like, when you first want to start something, let's say you want to go to university, good for you, right? Good for you. Good for you. And then that's it. And then everything goes away, right? But you're the one that has to go to class. You're the one that has to study. You're the one that has to read. You're the one that has to stay up all night and try to understand things. Go to your TA and ask questions and read and look at YouTube videos and really try to absorb it, right? And take notes and come up with different graphs. You're the one that's putting the grunt work. No one's actually around you supporting you or cheering you on. That was the whole point of the first picture where you found that first person on the stadium. So that's what it is. So you have the cheers, and then you have the quote unquote give up mentality. And this is what happens. Okay. So at first people are like, yeah, good for you. Oh, you want to become a doctor? Good for you. Good for you. Then they see you struggle. Well, obviously they're not the ones that are struggling. If you're obviously studying with people that want to aim towards the same direction, you're going to have a different kind of atmosphere. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking you're in a current state. People around you are not the people that you're going to end up being after you change. So they're going to look at you and they're going to see you kind of change, right? You're not going to spend as much time with them. Now you're going to be studying a lot more. Now you're going to be working a lot more. Now you're going to be reading a lot more. You're going to be working out a lot more. You're not going to be eating out with them a lot, as much or at all, right? So now they're looking at it. They're like, okay, this person is changing. We're not liking that. Now they're going to start encouraging you to give up. Okay. And the reason why they're going to encourage you to give up is because of you, because you're going to come up to them because they were your friends for a long period of time. You're going to start complaining to them. And by the way, this isn't just friends, this is family as well. You're going to start complaining to them. Okay. You're like, tell them how hard it is. Well, they don't want to hear it. And they already see you making some progress. They don't want you to make progress because they understand what's going to happen. They're not stupid. So they're going to say, it's not for you. You're going to struggle through it a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, you're spending a lot of time in point number 2, in the struggle. And you are going to complain quite a bit to these people initially until you find out that it's useless for you to complain to anybody. And then you're going to stop complaining. But before you realize that, you are going to complain. You're going to tell them how hard it is because you think they care. You're going to tell them how arduous it is, how much no one is supporting you, how, you cry, and whatever it is that you're going to tell them. And then they're going to get so sick and tired of hearing it and so sick and tired of them seeing you try. They're going to say, look, it's not meant for you, right? You've tried. It's just not meant for you. Just give up, do something else. Okay. And they're not going to say the word give up. They're going to say, maybe you should try something else. Maybe, like this stuff here isn't what you really are interested. They're going to try to play with your mind. But initially, that's what you wanted. So that's what you want. So that's normal. That's number 2. Okay. That's number 2. Number 3 is now when you're like, okay, you're not going to complain to them anymore because you realize it's futile. Now, because now they see you like you keep going, now they're going to start to distract you. Okay. Now they're going to come to you and say, hey, why don't you hang out with us? We don't see you anymore. Why don't you do this? What they're going to start giving you, like, if you're trying to get in shape, they're going to say, come on, just eat just once. Just eat just this once. Eat it. Like, it's not going to be a big deal, but you have a goal, right? And these are either your family members or your very close friends. Like, that they don't want bad things for you. It's all psychological. They're going to ask you to give up. They're going to distract you. Then you're going to pass through a phase where that's not going to phase you anymore. People telling you to give up. It's not going to work. People trying to distract you. It's not going to work. Then you fall into this phase called isolation. You're going to feel like you're completely alone. When in reality, everyone else that's going through what you're going through is going through the exact same thing. But because you don't have perspective, and here I am providing it for you, you're going to think to yourself, no one is going through this. You're the only one that's going through this. Most people give up there. And if you notice, that is right before you win. Okay, because now you've already passed through all these stages. You've already, you're starting to make some progress, but not the progress that you want. But now you feel completely isolated because you cannot relate to the people that initially you were relating to, and they can't relate to you because now you've become different and you're still on the path, but now you're completely isolated, completely. And now you're asking yourself, is this what I really want? Am I able to actually get to where I want to go? Then you start getting that second bout of self-doubt. That's completely normal. This is where I'm telling you, 95% of people quit right there. This is where it gets really hard because isolation is incredibly difficult. When you're by yourself, you feel like no one's supporting you, no one's texting you, no one's messaging you, no one's calling you, no one's paying attention to you. This is where the majority of people give up, right there. Now, if you keep going at that point, and this is where it really matters, because if you're going to keep going at that point, this is when you win. The story I told way back in the earlier podcast, I think it was like, podcast number 1, 2, or something like that. And I gave the story. I don't know if it's real or not, but even if it's anecdotal, doesn't matter. That there's this company or this guy that has had a lot of money, and then he researched an area where there was a lot of gold. And so he put up an entire team, spent a ton of money, got a lot of venture capital, like raised a ton of money, and then went to that site and it kept digging for months. Okay. Him and his team kept digging for months and months and months, and nothing happened. They couldn't find the gold. And so then they left everything, they dropped everything, filed bankruptcy, and then they left everything there because they filed bankruptcy. I mean, who cares? They left everything there and they just left. Okay. They did something else. Then a guy who's just driving by sees a bunch of these machinery, comes back the next day, sees the bunch of machinery, and comes again and again and says, okay, well, no one's here. So then he starts walking around, okay, like they're digging for something. So then he asks the geologist, and he asked or geographical engineer, whatever, those people that actually study the land and see like what's underneath the land. And so he asked him, he said, is there something precious here? And he says, yeah. He says, according to studies, there's actually gold here. But these people, they tried to dig and they couldn't find anything. Okay. But according to my studies, there is gold here. So he said, all right. So he gets into a machine. Apparently he knows how to drive a machine. He gets into the machine and then he literally digs one more, just goes, and then he finds the gold. Okay. Now, whether or not that's true, the story is poignant. And the reason why it is because you will never know until you give that last punch. You'll never know if you're going to knock the other person out until you give that last punch. And you don't know what that last punch is. So you have to keep swinging until the opponent goes down. And the opponent in that case is your self-doubt. The opponent in your case is the struggle, is that barrier between the struggle and the win. So you have to keep punching, and you don't know when that punch is going to be. You don't know when that dig is going to be until you find the gold, until you knock your opponent out, okay, until you win. And then you win. But what happens after that? There's a phase after that, of course, okay, because obviously, those people that haven't supported you, that kind of left you alone in isolation, once they see you win and you win big, and you will win big, that's when everybody comes and starts clapping for you. That's exactly the picture that I showed you. That's exactly what happens. So I just realized I've been speaking for 22 minutes and I really wanted to make this short, but I had 3 other slides. I'm not going to go through them because I really wanted to make this 10 minutes. So I hope you learned, if you're going through this process, I hope you learned the phases and pay attention to them and pay attention to which phase you're at, because it's really important that if you are in a certain phase, for you not to give up. There's one more thing I want to talk about because I did mention in the beginning, which is motivation. And I'll finish with this. So motivation. A lot of us want more motivation because, like you don't see the progress that you want. And so you want something to keep pushing you. Now, here's something that I can tell you from my own experience. If the initial aspect of you coming on board to this goal wasn't pain, you're going to need a lot of motivation on a daily basis. I'm going to say it again in a different way. If pain wasn't the initiator of you getting to a different goal, you're going to need motivation every day. If pain is that thing that actually got you to move in that direction, you're not going to need much motivation, if at all. Maybe a tiny bit, maybe the reminder. But if the pain is so large and so deep and so ingrained in you, nothing is going to stop you, and you will need no motivation because the pain is always going to be motivating you. Now, if you aren't in that zone where you were in a painful, maybe you're in a good state and you're like, I just want to get into a better state. That's not really a huge factor. So then now you have to really think about your motivating forces. Okay. And as Zig Ziglar once said, he said, motivation is like taking a shower. You need to take a shower every day. And so motivation is like that. Okay. But if it's pain, then the pain is the ultimate shower because that shower, the water's always turned on. So you're taking a shower permanently every single day. So you don't actually need to remotivate yourself. So that's one of the things. So in other words, focus on something that really pains you, like attach your goal to pain, and you won't need a single motivating factor. All right. Well, maybe I'll continue the other three things tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow it'll be a 5-minute podcast. And again, I do want to say thank you so much for attending this. I hope that you're benefiting, and I hope that if you're fasting, that your fasting is going really well. As I was saying to my mom yesterday, that these next 10 years are actually going to be really easy for fasting. So it's not going to be very hard because, like we're not fasting for a very long period of time. I was in the phase where I was actually fasting during the summer, which was incredibly difficult. But I mean, we're probably not going to see that for a very long time. So I hope it's very successful for you. If you're not fasting, I encourage you to at least fast for one day because it is a really cool exercise for you of restraint and seeing how strong your willpower is. Stay well, and as always, keep smiling.